For watching this video. My name is Brian Collin. I'm starting a series of tutorials on how to write a research paper from picking an idea of interest to you all the way to finalizing your conclusion and putting your paper in APA format. Before we get started, I wanted to show you this practice test I made using the Learn My Test study tool with content from my other YouTube videos. You can enter in and define key terms that you are expected to know on your test and organize them into categories that make sense to you. And then you can enter in differences between terms in the same category. I can take a test using the information that I've entered in. And then once I'm finished with the test, it will give me a breakdown of my results. And then I can view statistics about my last attempts on the test. And then one of the things it does is it'll break down my test scores by category. And so I can focus my results on the areas I don't know as well. So since I have 100 on operant conditioning, I'll take that one out and I can focus my future test questions on the answers I don't know as well, ultimately maximizing study time. You can take the practice test that I made using the link in the description, and you can sign up absolutely free at learnmytest.com. So the purpose of this video is to show you how to extract the important information from a peer review research article. And so the article I have here is Beyond Touchdown, College Students' Sports Participation, Social Media Use, College Attachment, and Psychological Well-Being. And so overall what the article is about is they're testing the hypothesis that college students that participate in sports are more likely to post on social media about sports, and they're more likely to post about their college sports teams, and when they do that, they feel more attached or feel a sense of belongingness to their college, and as a result of feeling that belongingness to their college, they're happier or feel a higher sense of psychological well-being. So the study's by Kim, Liu, and Sean, and so what I'm going to go into is talk about the introduction. And so the introduction of a research study is going to explain to you why this topic is important. So why should we be studying this? And as you can see in this study, they talk about the proportion of the American population engaging in social media increased from 5% to 69% in 2016. So if you're doing a study on social media that has to do with social media, you're going to want a statistic like this in your paper. So because it's going to help you explain why it's important. Well, 69% of people in 2016 use social media. So one of the things I ask my students to do is I ask them to go to the introduction and get, a bunch of statistics, facts, research findings from the introduction and list them out, because that information is going to be useful to you when you're writing your introduction on a similar topic. And it's also going to help you talk about the findings from the studies that you summarize. So I think extracting those important findings from the intro is really important. So some other facts that I put, 86% of adults ages 18 to 29 visit at least one social media platform regularly. So Facebook use is negatively correlated with self-esteem. So those are some other ones. So what I want you to do is if you go to the last few sentences of the introduction, usually in the last sentence or the last couple, you're going to see the purpose of the study. So in the last sentence of the introduction here, you can see the purpose. So it says, this study investigates how college students' sports participation is associated with their social media use, which in turn leads to their college attachment and consequently influences their psychological well-being. So I ask my students to write down the purpose of the research study. So in a lot of studies, the researchers will list out the hypotheses, and that's the case with this study. So for those of you that don't know what a hypothesis is, it's a prediction of what the researchers expect to find in the study that they test when they conduct the actual study. and they use their prediction, they use the past research that's already been done to make their predictions. And so you can see here, usually they put H1 period and list out the hypothesis. So you can see here, sports participation will be positively associated with social media use related to sporting events. So if you can see here, I asked my students to list out the different hypotheses because they're obviously very important to know when you're reading through the study. So I asked my students to pick a study that has human subjects. So if you're in a field that doesn't ask for human subjects, then this part may not be as relevant to you. But what I ask my students to do is go to the methods section, and under the methods section there'll be either a section called sample or participants, and it describes the type of people that were participated in the study and how they were recruited. And I asked my students to do some research on, or to write down exactly how many people participated, what country they were from, where they were recruited from. So in this case, the people recruited in this study included 580 undergraduate college students. They were Division I college students from the NCAA in the United States. They did not discuss race or ethnicity. So the results of this study cannot apply to people that aren't college students, and they don't apply to people or to college students that don't go to a Division I school. So if you don't go to a Division I school, these findings are completely irrelevant to you. You have to go to a Division I school because that's where all the participants were from. So the study did not discuss race or ethnicity. So that the problem with that is that different ethnic groups could use social media differently. And so that is something that needs to be considered when you're looking at research. So if you look at gender, 76.4% of the sample was female. So more than 3 out of 4 of the people that participated in the study were female. So the results are going to be more representative of females than they actually are of males when talking about, social media. And so the age distribution, so the average age was about 19.5. So that means you're probably getting younger college students. It may not represent older college students. They didn't have socioeconomic status, so there's no information on whether or not income has to do with how often you post about sports on social media. And then finally, the students were given extra credit to participate in the study, and so college students as a result, you're getting only college students that were willing to do a survey in order to get extra credit. So you're not getting the college students that weren't willing to do a survey. So the college students that may not be as motivated, may not be doing as well in school, that may not, be willing to do the questionnaire, those are the types of students you're not getting in this survey. You're getting the ones that are, probably more, that are motivated by their grades and by doing well. So the procedure, usually there's a separate section for procedure, and that just explains how they set up the study, what they did, if they organized people into groups and things like that. In this case, they just gave out a questionnaire. So the actual procedure is right here. They said undergraduate students, they were recruited by being in a communication course, and they were given a survey on Qualtrics, which is an online survey program. So that is what the actual procedure is for this study. So one of the things that you want to do next is, in psychology, we have these things called constructs. And so if you think about measuring things in psychology, like you can't just get out a ruler and measure anxiety. You can't just do that. And so you have to come up with some creative ways to measure anxiety. So you can do a survey and ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 5, how often do they worry about stuff, or that type of thing. So In psychology studies, they always have a section called measures that explains how those specific psychological terms are being measured. And they should give you a detailed description of what types of surveys they use. And so you can criticize them, and that's what I'm going to do now. So you can see that they measured sports participation. So in the first question, they asked how frequently they participated in these things on a 5-point scale of never to very frequently. And so you can see in the first question, they put attended football games. So let's just say you had a student that religiously attends soccer games at school, but never goes to football games. And then you had a student that goes to football games religiously, but never attends a soccer game. Both students are really actively attending sporting events at school, but because that one student attends football and the other student attends soccer games, the student that attends football games gets a higher score, right? And that doesn't mean that that student is actually more frequently involved in sporting events. So this item is a big problem in this questionnaire. So then you have some other questions like participated in sports activities such as sport clubs, went to activities at rec centers. And so the average scale was 3.13, which means, they did it about in the middle. So you can see social media use. So they asked how often on a scale of 1 never to very frequently. And they talked about sharing or liking photos, posting photos with university sporting events, tagging people or being tagged in sporting activities. So they had 6 or 7 different items, and they scored it on a scale of 1 to 5. And so that's how they measured social media use. Now, you could have somebody that is on social media all of the time, right? And so maybe they post a lot on social media, and a small amount of what they post is football or sports, and so they may post at least once or twice a week. Well, this person may rate their social media posting about sports like a 2, or whereas you may get somebody that posts about sports every time they post, but they only post like once a month. So that person, because every time they post about sports, they may put like a 4. And so you have one person who posts, the first person posts a lot more than the second person, but the first person has a higher score. So that's a problem with asking them never to very frequently, because they're just, giving what they think, how often they think they post. And so that's not giving them an exact number. Ideally, you'd be able to get the data from Twitter or Facebook, and they would tell you, like, he posted about sports 5 times, and he liked 6 photos about sports, and he was tagged in 5 sporting event photos this past month. So that type of thing would be ideally a way to do it, but obviously it's a lot easier to just ask them on a scale of 1 to 5. So college attachment. So here they asked, I'm pleased about attending this university. I'm satisfied with programs at this university. And they scored this on a scale of 1 strongly disagree, 5 to 5 strongly agree. And so I want to point your attention to the average score is 4.17. So you're getting people that really strongly like their college, right? So not only are you're getting mostly females, you're getting people that were willing to volunteer, and you're getting people that feel really good about their college, right? So then psychological well-being. So they asked, in general, I'm a happy person. My social relationships are supportive and rewarding. I'm engaged. And they, all these things that you would say yes if you're happy. And they rated it on a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. So one of the problems I have with this is that, it's making positive statements. So it's kind of assuming that things are positive, and that can affect how you strongly disagree to strongly agree. So they may need to have some negative comments, like I feel depressed frequently, to help balance it out. But this survey doesn't have that. And so you can see there's, on a scale of 1 to 5, people are averaging 4.23, which is really high. So that's a really high score. So you're getting people that are females, that are more likely to volunteer, that are younger, maybe freshmen, sophomores, that feel good and feel a attachment to their school, and that are generally feeling happy. So that's kind of the types of people that we're getting in the study. So what I ask my students to do is then go back down to criticize the actual way they collected their data, and to provide, and those are called limitations. So criticisms of how they collected their data. And so I would list all those things out, which I did here. I listed out all the things that I just brought up about how they surveyed their participants. And so these are things that you're going to want to talk about in your paper when you're critically analyzing this study. So one of the things I want to skip down towards is to go to the discussion section. So the discussion section is going to restate what what the hypothesis is, and then they're going to tell you what they found, what the results were. So what I ask my students to do is go to the discussion and document what the results were. So sports participation is positive. So let's find hypothesis 1. So for hypothesis 1, they found that so the first hypothesis about positive relationship between sports participation and social media use was supported. So sports participation leads to more posts about social media. Then you have hypothesis 2, sports participation was positively related to college attachment. So people that participate in sports were more attached, more likely to participate in campus activities, and feel more satisfied with their university. So 3, social media use. So our study finds that sharing and commenting on sports activities play an important role in the process by which students develop attachment to their colleges. So you can see that there. And then the study found a positive relationship between college attachment and students' perceived well-being. So the more attached they were to the college, the happier they were. So one of the things I tell my students to do is write down all the findings from the study. So all the findings from the discussion section are here. Then one of the things I do is I ask my students to take those findings and try to come up with their own explanation of what they mean for the real world, or what they say about the real world. And so you can see here, like, I think the study would suggest that college athletics and participation in college athletics, whether recreational or as a spectator, is good at increasing attachment to the college. So obviously that's why colleges spend a lot of money on sporting events, because they're a big deal in regard to colleges. And then college students can increase their attachment to a school by participating in sporting events. So if you're a college student and you want to feel some more attachment to your school, then, participate in sporting events, right? So at the end of the discussion section, the researchers should criticize themselves and explain, like, what they could have done better, and why there needs, and what future researchers can do to kind of address the problems with this study. So here you say the study uses cross-sectional survey data. So it surveyed a bunch of people at one point in time. So you don't really know if college students at point 1 did not participate in sports, and they had low attachment to their college, and then at time 2 they participated in sports, and now their attachment increased because they participated in sports, and their posts increased. And then at time 3, because their posts and participation increased, then their actual belongingness to the college increased, and then their well-being increased as a result. So you can't, when you do a cross-sectional study like this one, you're just looking at students at one point in time. So you can't really say that there was any cause here. You can just say, oh, they're, students that are more likely to participate, they generally are post more on social media, and they as a result, they feel more belongingness, and as a result, they have higher levels of well-being. So that's one of the problems they pointed out. Secondly, they said, so future researchers can look at people, at the same person, over courses of time. So they talked about personality. So you may just get extroverts that are more likely to participate in sports, and they're just more outgoing, and so they're more likely to make friends and stuff like that. And that may explain why, why the results were the way they were, instead of the fact that the actual sporting events is leading them to feel more positive. So those are some of the findings or limitations. I talked about a bunch of them here and listed them out, and I talked about some grounds for future research too. So you want to address these. So the thing with sports, like introverts and extroverts, the study may want to include a study that measures personality, so it can determine that that's not the reason why we're finding these results, that it's not their personality type. So the other thing I talked about is ethnicity. So they didn't talk about ethnicity. It doesn't look like they controlled for that. So that could explain some of these results. So it's important to be critical about your data and your results. So overall, this is how you pull the information out of a research article. I hope that you found this tutorial helpful. And remember that the best way to study is to take practice tests. If you can't find good practice tests, build your own and learn while you do it using the Learn My Test study tool. And you can also try our growing list of test banks for one in your field of study. And please click on the link in the description to take the practice test that I created.